Hi, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Philosophy Insights. Trump won, and today we talk about why this is an even bigger loss for the establishment than 2016.
So I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
The media is currently in a state of shock, struggling to process the reality unfolding before them. Many journalists and commentators appear almost speechless, grappling to find the words to convey their disbelief.
He is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president. And for so many of you watching right now, that news is, to say the least, a lot to digest. I understand that personally.
Donald Trump has won the presidency for a second time, this time after having served for 4 years, then disputing the 2020 election, and then, of course, rallying a mob to the Capitol to try to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power there. Americans deciding to send him back to the White House for a second term.
An unprecedented era in American history to have someone who believes firmly that he has total presidential power in terms of official acts based on the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year, does not have to serve in prison despite being convicted in a criminal trial.
In the last election cycles, Democrats warned of the death of democracy whenever their hold on power is challenged. But in this election, the narrative falls flat. Trump has won the popular vote, reflecting a decisive shift in public opinion. In fact, he is the first Republican candidate in 20 years to win the popular vote. The establishment was warned that Kamala was a weak contender, a politician with far-left leanings whose policy positions are out of step with mainstream America. Yet, the Democratic establishment and media were scrambling to reframe her as a moderate, centrist liberal. This is a typical strategy, repackaging left-wing policies to make them more palatable to the general public. But Trump's popular vote victory signals that Americans are looking for authenticity and policies that prioritize their concerns, not an establishment agenda dressed up as moderation. New York Times podcast actually understands at least one reason why the Democrats lost so many votes.
Well, one reason that I think is worth mentioning is the economy and helping working people against the establishment and corporations. It was the Democrats who used to be the party that was advocating change, that was against the establishment, that could channel the emotions of a disaffected young person. Donald Trump is that candidate, and so they should in no way be surprised that they have lost this.
Twitter is currently flooded with liberals lamenting that a convicted criminal now occupies the White House. But they were warned that their candidate is bad. They tried to prop Kamala up so much. All of this media marching in unity was not enough to sugarcoat how bad Kamala was as a candidate. But the machinery thought, since they did it with Biden in 2020, so they can do it with Kamala. But this time, simply installing a candidate was one step too much. But don't underestimate the Democrat elites. They are very good at probing how far they can and cannot go, and will remember this in the future. On the Trump side, Elon put a lot of effort in. He definitely put himself on the line, as Dave Rubin puts it.
If this had gone the other way, if the blue blob had won last night, it is very likely that Elon becomes the new target, right? They'd sort of be like, we don't really need to go after Trump anymore, because what does he have left? His movement is basically done. He can't run again. He's old, whatever. Elon would have been target number one for these people, and they would have gone after his businesses and his family. They would have done everything they could possibly do. They would literally try to destroy the man who is trying to make life interplanetary. That's how vindictive and evil this thing is that we have been fighting. Elon tweeted this last night just as the results came around. It's a picture of him holding a sink, which was, of course, a famous image of when he bought Twitter the day he walked in, and let that sink in. And there he is, of course, in the Oval Office. And I think he's going to do it. I think he is going to be the head of the Department of Government Efficiency.
The media establishment has long used tactics aimed at framing Trump as the worst kind of racist to undermine his credibility and appeal to voters. By constantly amplifying selective statements and taking his words out of context, mainstream media outlets reinforce a narrative designed to paint Trump in the most divisive light possible. This is a political tactic to alienate him from certain groups and discredit his policies without addressing the real issues at stake. These tactics reveal a deeper agenda, protecting the political establishment from a leader who challenges their power and priorities. By focusing on sensational claims rather than his policy proposals, the media diverts attention from topics that matter to working Americans, like the economy, border security, and national sovereignty. This smear campaign is just one more reason to distrust the media and made many voters rally behind a candidate who isn't afraid to speak plainly and stand up to an elite that's lost touch with the people.
In the realm of public opinion, the establishment's chosen tactic was to label Trump a racist, misogynist, wannabe fascist whose supporters back him simply because they hate everyone who isn't straight, white, and male. As Murray Rothbard wrote in a controversial but prescient essay back in 1992, the modern Washington establishment has shown a robust willingness to excuse and even side with explicit racists. They aren't actually appalled or offended by the off-color jokes and statements. They just recognize that it's easier to get regular, everyday Americans upset about those things than the rhetoric that truly worries those in power. In this case, Trump's honesty about how Washington screws the public over and his skepticism about the need to fight all these wars. The fact that Trump won again, after 8 years of relentless demonization from those in power, is arguably an even bigger loss for the establishment than 2016. It is certainly a bad outcome for the establishment media. The Trump campaign made a very explicit choice to engage more with alternative media than any other campaign in history. Trump sat for hours-long interviews on some of the biggest podcasts and internet talk shows, bringing his message to millions of listeners in a conversational setting, the opposite of short, scripted sound bites. Meanwhile, the establishment was freaking out about newspapers not printing formal Harris endorsements. The establishment media is quickly losing relevance in our media environment, and this election result confirms that.
From a populist perspective, the idea of Trump winning the 2024 election is not just a political victory. It's a pushback against the entrenched arrogance of the Democratic establishment and elitist circles. For years, these elites have positioned themselves as the ultimate decision makers, shaping policy and narratives in ways that are detached from the everyday struggles of average Americans. This perceived arrogance, the sense that they know better than the public, has left many voters behind. Trump's appeal to this base lies in his defiance of the norms and expectations set by these elites.
Which party looked at most Americans as degenerates, deplorables, idiots, imbeciles, rubes, plebs, the great unwashed, garbage? It turns out that people don't like to be treated this way. By the way, if you think that the way the Democrat establishment was speaking with arrogance towards, a large swath of the American population, you should see the ecosystem that I inhabit in academia. Just the level of arrogance that academics exhibit towards, all of the deplorables makes you ashamed to be an academic. Of course, this doesn't mean that I don't believe in academia. Academia is the most noble of pursuits. To be in Arabic, you say philosoph, right? When you get a doctor of philosophy, right? You're a philosoph in Arabic. You're a philosopher. You're a lover of knowledge. There's nothing more noble than to be an academic, as long as you are a true pursuer of knowledge, unencumbered by your identity, unencumbered by political bias, unencumbered by elitist arrogance, right? Think about Socrates walking through the market, willing to interact with everyone.
And also, let's not forget the following.
There is value in the American people again repudiating the political establishment by voting for a candidate they had clearly deemed unacceptable. If Trump can follow through on his promises to end the war in Ukraine, appoint a libertarian to his cabinet, and finally free Ross Ulbricht, and if he greenlights Elon Musk's plan to start a government efficiency department with Ron Paul, then this election will prove to have been even more consequential. Further, the federal government's use of money printing allows them to hide and delay the costs of government programs. All the worst things Washington is currently doing to us and to people abroad are only politically possible because of the Fed. The price inflation our government forces on us is not only a blatant transfer of wealth from the poor and middle class to the politically connected rich, it has incredibly damaging impacts on our culture. Thanks to Fed-induced permanent price inflation, people are encouraged to take on debt and be more short-sighted and reductionist in their economic decisions. Firms become artificially big. The consumption of stuff takes priority over the cultivation and production of resources. The quality of our elites and leaders diminishes, and generosity recedes out of community life.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this content, subscribe and hit the bell.